morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Malia Ahmad. The question today is, to what extent can investment and innovation in Lake Nona, Florida, transform the issue of urban sprawl over the next 25 years in relation to scientific development? Growth in regard to science in Lake Nona so far is different partnerships have led to innovations and development. One of these is smart homes, where different parts of the medical city, such as UF and UCF Medical Department and an engineering department, have come together to build the nation's first health-related smart home. Multiple biomedical companies and schools have opened up in Lake Nona, including but not limited to UF, UCF, the VA, Nemours, Berkham Institute of Research, and more medical discovery institutes. Sources. My first source was from the New York Times. Orlando's newest attraction is medical. I believe this is a credible source because New York Times has been around forever and they're not politically biased in this article specifically. The different pieces of evidence that I used from the source includes Jeb Bush, the recent old mayor of Orlando, of Lake Nona, announced plans to court large biomedical companies with government incentives. Lake Nona was also the #1 destination for doctors and other medical professionals over the past 13 years. $310 million were set aside by the government just to use for the different scientific jobs in Lake Nona, which attracted over 300 scientific jobs. In this article, there was no false logic because it was pretty straightforward about explaining the evidence, and it shows the appeal of Lake Nona and the medical city. My second source was from the Orlando Sentinel, titled Lake Nona Opening Doors to a Healthy Smart Home. As I explained before, it shows how Lake Nona went from a literal patch of land and cow grazing land to build one of the nation's first and only smart homes related to health-related technology. The false logic in this, though, is everything is a prototype in this house. It has never been tested before, it is being tested now. And you lose your freedom and privacy for every positive aspect that the house provides. For example, you wear a device in the house, when you're in the house, which tracks your sleeping, breathing, eating, and other small habits like brushing your teeth. All of this data is then transferred to scientists at UF and UCF, which is an invasion of your privacy, if you want to look at it that way. My third source is from the Fortune News, and it's titled How to Build a Great American City. This source mentions the research done in different biomedical companies in Lake Nona, and it talks about how the layout of residential areas contributes to individual health and individual needs. But the catch is, it didn't provide specific statistics, or evidence that the studies by these different biomedical companies used. The false logic with this source is expansion and additions of buildings, which this source talks about how Lake Nona will be pedestrian friendly and how there will be a lot of bike paths and walking paths. But with the expansion of different buildings and addition of roads, land for pedestrians will be cut down. This was my weakest piece of evidence, which I used at the end of my essay, because of the false logic and the contradiction to itself. Whereas my first source was my strongest because it had less false logic and had more evidence. Do you have any questions? Yes?
What makes Medical City such a destination for doctors and other scientists?
It's very appealing because there's so many different elements, and because of the different elements that come together, like the UF Medical Center, UCF Medical Center, the Institute, and the Research Institute, it brings more scientists and more jobs to Lake Nona, which make it look more appealing because more research is done there. Thank you.